I am absolutely delighted to be here. I can't believe what an honor it is to give this talk. I'm flattered beyond belief to be here. I better put on my glasses here. I think I have some notes here somewhere. There we go. This is really great. It's really a privilege to be here. So I have a pretty simple message that I want to deliver tonight. And that's that all that we want as legal educators is going to happen. That's the good news. Specifically, we're going to reach our full potential someday. All right, but it's definitely going to happen. Over the last 5 years, thanks to some serious economic hardships, the genie got out of the bottle, and it's probably not going to go in. I don't think there's any way it ever could go back in the bottle. And education for our students are already getting reaping benefits. I can't believe I'm here at ETL for just its short infancy and coming back and hearing again the innovations that are taking place. I mean, a lot of stuff is happening. If legal education has one serious critique, we don't have a good publicist. There's a lot of good news to be shared with what's going on in legal education these days. Little pods, and actually they're not just one individual, they're groups of people getting together, sharing ideas, and this is a great forum to come together to share those ideas. So our students are benefiting, I think, immediately. Second order effect, clients are going to benefit. Eventually we're going to tap into the latent legal market where average citizens can afford lawyers again, because we're going to solve that problem. And then broader society is going to benefit just in the nick of time, because there's some serious issues, in case anybody hasn't noticed, that the lawyers are going to have to step into the breach to solve. So that's the good news part of the talk. All we want is going to be ours someday. Here's the catch, though. For those with a vision and appetite for a better way, and that's everybody in this room, change never happens fast enough. So we always have this sense of discontent that because things aren't changing fast enough, things aren't good enough. And I don't know if that's exactly entirely right. And so my question tonight is this: how fast can legal education change? Because that's exactly how fast I want to go. I don't want to go any faster. And notice my point here. What I want to say is likely quite different than what I want. What I want is likely quite different than what is possible. So I don't want to confuse what Bill wants with what's possible, because what Bill wants may be impossible, and so I'd be wasting my efforts if I pursued it. I want the full potential, the full boat, and the only way I can do that is the reality-based version of how we're going to get there. And so I really have to understand how fast we can go and not try and push the throttle anymore. Otherwise, I'm going to get frustrated, and my cynicism will spill over and spoil the views of good people like you. So the judge intimated a little bit about my background, and so maybe the improbable story I'm going to tell doesn't seem that improbable anymore. And I'm still kind of wondering whether I deserve to be here, because I still think that most of my work is undone. So it's still ahead of me. But here's my story in a nutshell. I dropped out of college when I was 21 years old. I went to the London School of Economics after my first 2 years at Case Western Reserve in Cleveland, Ohio. And all I could pass on to you is don't let your kid read too much Kierkegaard at too young an age, because they're likely to drop out. So I had an 11-year sidetrack, and that actually took me on to the fire department. And I have a habit of showing up when I'm asked to. And so I showed up at union meetings, and then people retired, and all of a sudden I'm put in charge of collective bargaining, and I got to interact with very esteemed lawyers on the management side, which wasn't particularly my point of view, but it was interesting and challenging, and the world was changing. The internet was just becoming into being, and the world was globalized. And I want to get back into the game, and I kind of felt like that maybe it was time to go back and finish my education. So I re-enrolled at Case Western Reserve for my final year of college, and my goal was to go to law school, because I thought that I wanted to get back in the game. And getting back in the game to me was going to law school. And that's where I learned for the first time about the value and the power of teaching. I want to tell you a little bit about that. This is one thing that I really believe in my heart of hearts. Early experiences are extremely formative. And so when you go back, when I'm beginning my second career, those early experiences in my second career are very formative. And for those of us that are teaching, all of undergraduate and all of law school is an early experience. We are dealing with soft clay. We should be very sensitive to that. So I had a professor when I went back to my senior year of college, and I didn't quit my job. I went part-time. I was working 1 day on, 2 days off at the fire department. We had this great schedule. And so I'd stack all my days and use my comp time because I didn't want to miss a single class because I was paying I didn't get any scholarship help, and I was paying the full freight, and my wife was aghast at how much private education was at the time. And so the idea was, I'll burn up my comp time by getting straight A's, and then somebody will pay me to go to law school. I'll get a scholarship to law school. So that was the goal. And so I stacked all my time on 2 days. And so I stumbled into I was an econ major, and I stumbled into this class taught by a guy named Andy Morris, who was a law professor at Case, but because he had a PhD in economics, they relegated him some of his time to the business school, and so he was teaching courses at the business school. And so everybody knows that experiential education is the kind of the new black. It's coming into style. But here was my introduction to experiential education before I ever knew what the word was. So Andy Morris had this law and economics class, and he gets up and he walks into the hallway. And so all the students get up and we trundle out into the hallway, and he takes some milk and he spills it on the floor. And we go through a slip and fall case from a plaintiff's perspective, and we try and figure out who's the best cost avoider. And it's kind of pretty vivid when you're spilling milk out there and you're scratching your head and you're thinking about the injury that occurred to the plaintiff and how could this have been avoided. And it was really a great way to learn law and economics before I knew any law. So that was nearly 20 years ago. And I still recall some of the antics that went on in that classroom. It was a total blast. I was blessed to have this great teacher. But this is a story about a great teacher, which this room is filled with great teachers. I want you to appreciate the impact that you're having on people's lives because we don't tell these stories enough. So here's the second story I want to tell you about Andy. So I'm a student at the next semester because it happens to be he's teaching on Tuesdays and Thursdays again, so I enroll for another class with Andy, and the first one was good enough. So I'm a student in this law and environmental economics class, and I can remember it as if it were yesterday. So it's halfway through the semester, and he's handing out pieces of paper. And by the way, it's before PowerPoint, and so he's doing all the classes with transparencies, which was the state of the art at the time. And he asked on this piece of paper, said, "What do you like about this class? What don't you like about it? How can I make it better?" And so at the end of class, he collects all the evaluations. And do you want to know what happened the next class? What do you think happened in the next class? He changed on a dime, incorporating all that feedback, and it became better. And I was just flabbergasted. And I can remember, to me, that there was a simple but vivid example, the power of data. I'm a data guy, and he's just like, he collected data, he incorporated the data, he changed on a dime, and it actually was, frankly, was one of the best examples of character that I've ever encountered in my life, because he cared. I mean, he was communicating to all these students, of which it wasn't his purpose. His purpose was to get better, to discharge his duty, but he was communicating to them that we were valuable enough for him to change what he was doing, and he didn't have to wait until the end of the semester to do it. So I was fortunate enough to have an absolutely a great teacher, and I can remember when having him as my teacher, he threw a switch in me. I was a different person after I had him, and I know that I actually became a better person. And a lot of what his effect on me was beginning to think a lot less about myself and a little bit more about other people and wanting to make a difference. And he changed my character just because of being in the ambit of his character, and it was what he did. It wasn't what he said. And so there's a wonderful sociologist at Hamilton College named Dan Chambliss, and you come to these ETL things and you hear these things. And Gillian Hatfield's describing the work of her husband, who's a sociologist, and he's got this colleague named Dan Chambliss. And it turns out that Chambliss, some of his seminal work in sociology, he tries to figure out why undergraduates switch their major. And so, they switch their major because they're making more money, or, this falls out of vogue, or what have you. Well, it turns out one of the biggest factors in why people pick majors is they have a brush with a great teacher. A teacher that takes an interest in them, lights their imagination, and changes the trajectory of their course, of their lives. And here's a little thing from the Chronicle of Higher Education. It says, charisma alone is not the answer, Chambliss said, noting that while part of the students' judgment of their professors in the news study was based upon the quality of lectures and presentations, far more was about the extent to which professors were engaged with students, took steps to get to know their students, and were personally accessible, and so forth. And so what I'm saying is that's what was done to me, and I'm just doing what was done to me. I mean, that was such an impactful experience to me. I'm just trying to replicate that. I'd like to throw another switch like that switch was thrown in me. I mean, I can almost tear up when I think about the impact of that one teacher on my life, what a gift that was. So now let me get back to the part of the talk where I say that the change has not happened fast enough, at least for those of us with real reformist zeal. You know, we can get a little bit disappointed, and we can think of all the reasons why people aren't changing. So you know it's a good conference when you take home a nugget of knowledge or wisdom that's fundamentally and permanently will alter your world view and how you look at things. And that's where I was last year when I left the ETL conference. And I'm a little embarrassed as I tell you why it was such a, what I remembered from it. And there were some of you in the room I was sitting near, and we talked about it. So please brace yourself, because it's not as bad as it's going to sound, okay? But it was a quote from an eminent physicist, Max Planck, who was substantially responsible for the shift from kind of classical physics or Newtonian physics to quantum theory early in the 20th century, laying the foundations for Einstein, etc. Well, quantum physics was the experiential education of the early 20th century. The world wasn't quite ready for it, at least among the old guard. And so we have this Newtonian physics and all the evidence to the contrary. They're still not buying into quantum theory. And as Max Planck is reported to have said, truth never triumphs, its opponents just die out. Science advances one funeral at a time. Now think about that. These are physicists, and I want to be absolutely clear for the record that I don't want anyone to die in this room or at my own faculty. That's not the point of this at all. But let's think about this for a second. I think that we get frustrated because we think that the changes in legal education ought to just fall to logic, and that's just not the game we're playing here. And I think we need to step back and think a little bit more empathetically about the folks that we're trying to convince. Which I think some of this stuff is impervious to reason. Just let me briefly lay out the case why I think that the status quo really doesn't have a leg to stand on. By my lights, it's just just implausible to be content with the current state of legal education. So our students are mired in debt, and this is all old news to everyone here. Employments are underwhelmed by the quality of the skills of our graduates. Students can't find jobs, not enough of them, only a little bit more than 55% are falling into their vocation, and ordinary citizens can't afford lawyers. I mean, things are kind of a mess. So surely there's got to be a better way to this, yet we worry most about the ideas that we can't. I've heard many discussions here regarding the last thing you want to do is take your idea and run it through an educational policy committee, because it won't come out the other side. And you think to yourself, really, is this about a reason, what have you? And so I've thought a lot about how to affect change. And I want to qualify something here. I work in legal education. I consort with lawyers. I think that lawyers and legal educators are people of the finest character. Even the people that may be in the educational policy committee that might kill a proposal that I might want to put through. By the way, if I put a policy through the educational policy committee and gets killed, I'm missing a lawyer competency because timing is definitely one of them. You ought to know if it's even possible before you submit the proposal. But we get frustrated because we know that the committee may not be ready for a policy that we think is absolutely terrific. So let me get back to the theme here, that we're going to get what we want. It's going to happen like water running downhill, because the world needs more. We have too many lawyers, supposedly. We don't have enough great lawyers, and great lawyers can be made. and they're made by teachers that really care. And so we're going to get more of those great lawyers. I think that we'll really know when the things have taken hold, when we have all these great teachers assembled in a room like this, and now we have great teachers collaborating. What we're really missing, what we'll know that the tipping point has been reached, is when some of this greatness gets affiliated at kind of the institutional level, and some institutions just kind of run ahead of the pack, and employers begin to follow, and students begin to follow, and it just becomes clear this is just a better way to teach. There won't have to be any acrimony at that time. God forbid we ever make the mistake of saying, "I told you so." That's just not a lawyer. That's not in a competent lawyer's vocabulary. You never say that. You bring people along, you give them credit, and you thank them for helping out. But I want to just end with this thing. I wrote a paper called "The Blueprint for Change," and it was really, I think, to a certain extent, I didn't think that I was associated with the people that were criticizing legal education. And, I've got my opinions. I think it could be better. I said legal education's got a lot of problems. Quality is one of them. And I think it could be better. But I didn't think that I really had the moral standing to say anything bad about legal education. I laid out a kind of soup to nuts solution. You don't have to buy my solution, but I did lay it out in fairly great detail. And one of the things that I think is worth thinking about was what I call the 12% solution. I want to bring it back to Andy and the people like Andy. What's 12%? 12. Why did I pick that? Well, I think it sounds kind of sticky, and so 12% maybe you'll get a little bit of traction. But if you think about it and you break down law school into the 3 years, 12% is one course a year, and one course a year is taught by one professor. And so if you could just have one professor a year who's throwing the switch, it's almost impossible, I think, based upon what was done to me, to not change somebody into a more kind of a self-directed person that really is hungering for knowledge and hungering to get better. And we can kind of pull ourselves together. And by the way, this room is filled with the 12%. There's no doubt about it. The last pitch I want to make regarding this one is something I learned about change management. I've read way too much change management because I want to go as fast as this ship can go and no faster, but I want it to go at full speed, what it's capable of doing. And so I'm reading these change management books, and one of the things that they say, and the lawyers will think this, and the intellectuals think, how do we change? Well, we think, analyze, and change. And you go to all these symposiums, so we're waiting for the best idea, and then we'll all drop. So, oh, that's the best idea. We'll all change suddenly. Oh, that's never going to happen. The way change happens is it's see, feel change. So the 12%ers, what we really have to do is we have to build working prototypes, and we have to invite people into our classrooms and not say that we've got a better way, but just show them how much fun we're having. And one of the things that I heard today at my ETL Fellows Lunch, which I'll be, as long as I'm a fellow, I'll look forward to, was the fellows, one of their secret weapons is getting very popular with students. And having the students feel like, wow, you really invested in me. This is really special. And then slowly but surely, the stakeholder odds begin to change. And so, in the Blueprint for Change, one thing that I think that would accelerate these things on this see, feel, change, and I've collaborated with some of you on this idea, is putting together a kind of a summer institute where we can begin to kind of pilot some of our best ideas. Instead of just talking about it, let's work together over a period of a couple of weeks and build some intercession type courses and bring some of our colleagues along if they're curious about what experiential education is, and just show them, let them run the class for a couple of hours after they watch us run it for a day or two, and they'll see how much fun it is, and bring the employers in, and the employers will say, well, these people look like fourth years at our shop. We'll say, well, you should hire some of them. And we could begin to change these labor market, outcomes. And so hopefully, and so I'm looking for a philanthropist that can give me about $10 million, and we can make all this happen, and really bring all the 12%ers together in summer. I think I vote for any place in Colorado because it's a good place to spend the summertime, and bring the family along here. But I think we could do a lot of good here, because really the way we do it is see, feel, and change. And I had that. I was blessed with that. I don't know if other people have had these professors that threw a switch. I got my switch thrown, and now I want to throw other switches. And I know that a lot of those folks here have had the same experience to them, and they want to pass it on. So this is definitely going to happen. U.S. legal education is on its way to becoming great. So I just want to make sure, let me repeat that, U.S. legal education is on its way to becoming great. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, just not fast enough for our taste here. But let's adopt that lawyer competency. We can only go that fast and no faster. Thank you very much for your attention.